All right, good evening, everyone. It's a little bit after 8:15 on Sunday, October the 10th. And unfortunately, we have a weather situation developing. It's nothing to get terribly overly concerned about, but it is something to watch, and we're going to dive right into it and tell you what's going on and tell you what we can expect. All right. So first and foremost, this is the current radar image, and as you can see, we have the yellow boxes, which are severe thunderstorm warnings. And right now, the warnings are mainly for wind. There have been some hail reports up to 1 inch. So while any hail is not great, 1 inch is certainly better than 2 or 3 inches. But hail is not really our main threat. Our main threat is going to be wind. Now we've seen some of these storms have wind gusts over 70 miles an hour. I talked about that this morning in my initial update, that wind would probably be our biggest concern with this system, unlike Oklahoma, who's seen the bigger tornadoes and much bigger hail. And if you walk outside right now, it's very windy. Just gives you an indication of how strong the storm system is. The winds in the upper levels are very strong. It's carrying that momentum down to the surface. And then, of course, that's what's going to get, it's also being transported down into our squall line, which will give us some gusty winds as well. So what's going to happen? Well, let's put this in motion and get you an idea. This line is actually sped up. I've been talking to people that have asked me, what the timing was, and my thought was 9 o'clock, and I after 9 o'clock, and I still think that's going to be the case, but probably not too much, not too much past 9 o'clock. I was thinking really more like 9:30 or 10, but the way the line is going, it's probably gonna be faster than that. So that's actually some good news too, if you think about it, because the bad news is the line's coming towards us with a lot of wind, lightning, even some small hail. The good news is it's moving fairly fast. So once it passes your location, then it's not gonna last very long. I would say the core of the storm, when it passes over your area, might last 15 minutes. 30 minutes total from first sprinkle to last sprinkle. So that's the good news. So this will not be an all-night adventure, if you will. And so that's the good news. Once this passes through, we'll be done for the night. The only problem is we've got to get through it. So, but with that, all right. So I want to show you the velocity mode on the radar, because this kind of gives us a better idea about the winds. And so there's a couple things I want to point out. And again, for those of y'all who may not be familiar, red is away from the radar, green is toward the radar, and then the purple is actually missing data. So if you're wondering what purple means, it's missing the radar in that scan. It just didn't scan that section, so it's missing data. So the thing I would point out is this area right here. So you see this brighter, within this green, you see this brighter white, bluish type color, and that's just indication of very strong winds relative to the winds around it. Now, going back to the radar loop, you can get an idea of, so this is actually a good indication here. So this is actually what we don't want to see. And the thing I haven't mentioned yet is the tornado threat is not zero. The tornado threat is not your traditional supercell tornado. In essence, it's one storm, big hailer, big tornado underneath it. It's not that type of tornado situation, but this is kind of tornado situation where they spin up along the line and kinks in the line. So let's zoom in on this. And so we call this a notch, and I'll circle this right here. So this is Millsap. So this is Weatherford, Hudson Oaks. We're not getting too far from the western edge of Fort Worth. So I wouldn't be shocked if I saw this get a tornado warning because of that notch. That would be the classic case of a spin up. And so let's put the velocity on this particular storm. Yeah, okay, so not in this particular scan. See, is this the same scan time as a radar, as a reflectivity? Okay, it is. It's about 3 minutes old, so I bet they're about to update this again. So it's not showing up in the velocity yet, but I wouldn't be surprised if it did. Okay, it just updated. Let's see. I was looking at my spotter reports. Okay, so 57 mile an hour wind gusts in west of Mineral Wells. So that's when the storm passed through. So that kind of gives you an idea of what we're dealing with. So if we put the velocity mode in motion, then you can kind of get a better idea about how fast these storms are moving, and with the velocity that you see on the ground. And he'll load here in a second. There we go. Okay. Anyway, and so you can kind of see it popping, and like I said, moving pretty good clip. And so Mineral Wells, like I said, that there was a wind gust there, almost 60. Now that's just that one report; it could have been more. But as you can see, it is definitely something that's will get your attention. Now, if we put let's see if I can get this one on here. Yeah. So if we put the analyzer on here, if I can move over here. So yeah, so these are winds moving toward the radar. And so now this is measured about typically 1,000 foot off the ground, but it's the lowest scan the radar has. So it doesn't, the further away from the radar site you get, the beam kind of goes up like this. And so it's not at the surface. But it's pretty close. It's pretty good indication. So where you see this bluish, darker bluish, it's those are 72 miles. The radar is measuring winds of about 75 miles an hour, and so now again that's not necessarily right at the surface, but it's pretty close. It's going to be pretty close to the surface if it's measuring 72 by the radar. So that's something to watch out for. So so that kind of gives you an idea of what some of these storms are capable of. All right, so let's go back to the reflectivity, and we'll scan out a little bit. Okay, that notch is not quite as pronounced, so that's good news. So let's scan out a little bit here and see in the bigger picture what we have. Okay, so as we talked about earlier this afternoon, we felt like when the line was back northwest of Abilene that it would solidify, and it's definitely done that. But and that's the thing about these lines is that from a rain standpoint, we're definitely going to get some rain out of it. Not very much, to be honest with you, because it's just moving too fast. But not everybody's going to see the worst of the worst. I always like to emphasize that. So, all right. So let me check my comments real quick. A bunch of highs. Thank you, everybody, for the highs. Let's see if I have any questions over here. Misty, your anxiety's over top. Yeah, don't let that get you too much. It's something to pay attention to, but don't let that get you too much. Yes, Angela saw the notch near Millsap. If you have a storm shelter ready, if needed, that never hurts. I hope you don't really need that, but it never hurts to have it. So that's definitely, if you got storm shelters, I don't think it's going to be that type of classic situation, but anyway. All right, so let's put this in motion again. And so again, you can see there's a couple things that we want to watch out for. Like I said, we want to watch out for notches in the line, and of course we want to watch out for the velocity, the wind, what we're seeing report wise. And like I said, I think the biggest threat, as I've said all along today, the biggest threat for this is wind. I wouldn't be shocked if we saw a little small hail. I think the biggest hail we might see might be quarters, but let's hope it doesn't do that. And but again, the wind is going to be the major threat. Now, the other thing, too, is that sometimes we discount and we don't think a whole lot about, while lightning is not a severe weather parameter, it is something that can cause damage. So there's quite a bit of lightning. You can see these lightning symbols within the radar. You can definitely see to where there is a lot of lightning with these storms. So that's something else you'll see. You'll see a lot of lightning, of course, a lot of thunder, a lot of wind, as we talked about, and for at least 10, 15 minutes at your location, torrential rain. In one way we need the rain, we just don't need it quite like this, but we're going to have some more storm systems come later in the week that will help us. Hopefully it won't be quite as stormy. All right, so just because I'm the weather nerd, let's zoom out a little bit. No, that's not the right way to go. And, I talked about Oklahoma City, and they had the really bad stuff. I haven't looked at the reports specifically for Oklahoma City, but let's zoom in on them, see what we got. All right, so they have gotten the line, but they still have a tornado. They have a couple tornado warnings, and I can see why too. And this is actually a good good indication. So now, again, if you're just tuning into this presentation, this is not Dallas Fort Worth. This is Oklahoma City. So calm down, just for reference. But there's definitely a hook, if you will, a notch on this one. If you put the velocity on here, oh yeah, that's doesn't get much clearer than that. Now, like I said, that there is a possibility that we would see that in this area, but I'm thinking not really, certainly not that defined. All right, so let's zoom back on the reflectivity. And all right, so let's zoom this back out. So this is the northern end of the line, but as you can see, Oklahoma City and Oklahoma in general has a much rougher time than we have. All right, so let's go back to home and see what our line's looking at. And of course, you can tell that even from the Oklahoma City radar side, it scans a lot further away than it used to. So as you can see, there's really no part of this with these yellow boxes. There's really no part of the line that doesn't have some type of severe thunderstorm warning. So that's pretty much what you're going to get. Now, like I said, the Weather Service has to do it that way because we don't have the technology to be that individualized, especially in the squall line storm. But remember, not everyone's going to see in this case, the definition of wind, severe wind, which is 57 miles an hour or greater. Not everybody's going to see that. But, it's also almost impossible to know that when you look at the line. And plus, they can pop up anywhere along the line. So that's why, if you're wondering why they have to warn such a big area, then that's typically why they have to do that. All right, so let me go back to the comments. Let's see, I don't see a whole lot of new ones. Yeah, Debbie, let's see. Oh, my trash man will be surprised with all the trash or the cans. Well, hopefully not. Hopefully it won't blow away. All right, so let me check my spotter reports here. Let's see if we got anything new. 60 mile an hour, 59 miles an hour. Okay, so haven't seen anything much more than 60, so that's good. And if you look at these these warning boxes, and we can kind of zoom in on the information. So what they're warning for. So that's the one thing I like to look at is because, again, for those of you who may not be familiar, the severe weather warning criteria is this: tornado, obviously, kind of a duh. Hail greater than 1 inch in diameter or greater. And we haven't really seen any of that. And then winds 57, or they always round it up to 60 miles an hour on warnings. So what does this warning tell you? So this warning is, if you look at and it may be hard for you to read there, but if you look at the hazard, the severe weather hazard is 60 mile an hour wind gusts and quarter size hail. So quarter size hail is not an inch in diameter. So they're not warning the storm for hail. That's good. They're warning the storm for wind because it meets the wind criteria of 57 miles an hour or greater. Now, the way I look at it is that's good news in a way. I mean, it's not good news because it's severe, but it's good. It's a very low end criteria issuing a severe thunderstorm warning. So, in other words, it just kind of barely meets that criteria. Doesn't mean it's not happening, but I just contrast that to say if the hazard was 70 mile an hour wind gusts or even 80 mile an hour wind gusts, which we have seen before, then then you have something to really be concerned about. But we're not seeing that. That was that particular box. But let's focus on the box that's kind of heading toward the Metroplex. Okay, same thing, 60 mile an hour wind gusts and quarter size hail. So now, that's not to say that, because I can promise you that when these storms get to Denton, Collin, Dallas, and Tarrant County, and probably even Ellis and Johnson County, they're going to be severe thunderstorm warned. And hopefully they'll stay along the 60 mile an hour wind threshold. Misty, what's your timeline? Okay, so Misty's my good friend from high school. She does not live in the Metroplex. I'm not going to say exactly where she lives, but she lives south of the Metroplex. So probably after 11, Misty, I would say, give or take. So just keep that in mind. And same hazard for you, Misty. You might have a spin-up tornado, probably not, but definitely wind gusts down your way too. All right, so I got one question. Is a tornado happening now? Not in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. If you tuned in a little bit earlier, I was on the Oklahoma City radar, and there was definitely a tornado warned storm up that way, but not in Dallas-Fort Worth. Let's see. Andrew, I'm guessing a couple of the severe stuff is going to go right through how. Probably, yeah. I think that if you're anywhere in the Metroplex, or really if you're anywhere along I-35, US 75 from really up into Oklahoma, but as far as the North Texas side of it, you're going to see storms anywhere along that corridor, and pretty much anywhere in the Metroplex and the surrounding area, you're going to see storms. Now, this is what I like to emphasize is that, not every person that's watching, listening, things like that, is going to experience a severe weather event, thankfully. But because the possibility exists that you could, then we have to treat it. You have to treat it like you will and just be prepared. So what does that mean? If you have anything loose in your yard, I would definitely secure it, because if you do happen to get a 60-mile-an-hour wind gust, you're going to that stuff is going to blow away, the loose stuff. And so you can definitely expect that. You can expect a lot of lightning. Not all of it's cloud to ground. Thankfully, a lot of it's cloud to cloud, but there's definitely some cloud to ground lightning, so that's definitely a hazard. And torrential rain won't really be much of a hazard in the sense that the ground's pretty dry, and it's not going to be a flooding situation, not with this event, so that's not really an issue. It's just something you ought to be aware of. And then lastly, like I said earlier, it's not going to last very long. It's going to be maybe 15 minutes at any one location, maybe 30 minutes from first sprinkle to last sprinkle. And then, like I said, you're going to be able to get on with your evening. It won't be much left of it, obviously. But but it won't be an all-night event. Thankfully, it won't be an all-night event where we have to stay up and get woken up and all that. So really, that's about it at the moment. It's just it's just a good old-fashioned severe thunderstorm squall line situation. I've seen worse. Hopefully, it'll stay that way. And I'll keep watching it. Now, let's zoom in real quick before I sign off. And all right, so we're going to do a little focus here on this particular storm. Now, I will say too, this is what makes these squall lines really unique and interesting from who gets it and who doesn't. So, if you're in Weatherford, and I don't know if my good friend is watching from Weatherford, but if she is, Miss Shannon, hopefully you're already prepared. But they're probably going to get, and just north of there, they're probably going to get the brunt of it. But like I said, it's not anything that's catastrophic or anything. But if you're about 10 miles south of there, 15 miles maybe, you might not see this much. So that's just how these storms go. Now you can kind of tell too here that, well, if I get my screens to work, you're starting to see a little bit of outflow right here. So I don't think these storms are going to become outflow, what we call outflow dominant, as we would like to call them. And what that really means is once storms get really outflow dominant, then the cold air they're rushing out kind of cuts off their fuel to keep the storms going. That's not the situation we really have here. Sadly, if nothing else, the further east these storms go, the more punch they'll probably pack. So that's why we're definitely not out of the woods by any stretch of the imagination. Okay, so let's put this in motion one more time and see what we got. And I think we're good on the comments. Looks that way. Okay. And we'll get there in a second, I promise. There we go. All right, so you can kind of see that if you look real close, you can kind of see a lot of purple there. Back when it was to the west, so had a little bit more hail in it. We're not seeing near as much hail as we used to, so that's definitely good news. But as you can see, like I said, moving in a pretty good clip. Notches are kind of behaving themselves, so that's good. Hopefully, it'll stay that way. But again, so if you just kind of put this time frame in there, as far as your location. So if you're in Fort Worth, matter of fact, now we got since it's getting closer to Dallas Fort Worth, we got some tracks. So yeah, after 9 o'clock, if you're in Tarrant County, maybe closer to 9:30 from the eastern side of Tarrant County. Dallas County, after 9 o'clock for sure, maybe closer to 9:30. Same thing for Collin County, Denton County a little bit before that. Then, like I said, 30 minutes, it'll be over. But like I said, just prepare for the worst, but hopefully that you won't get the worst. And it'll be over. Like I said, it won't last too long. All right, so let's put the velocity back on there real quick. And so again, for those of y'all just joining us, red's away from the radar, green's toward the radar. purple is missing data. So the radar is just not scanning that area. So let's put our information tool on here and see what we got still. Okay, so 60, 67, 68, some 70. We saw 75 earlier. Now these things cycle up. Now again, as I said, the radar beam is not hitting the ground. It's not parallel to the ground. It's up in the atmosphere about 1,000 feet. But still, that's close enough. So I think that's why we've seen the 60-mile-an-hour wind gust report. Okay, so with that, let me put it back on reflectivity real quick. So what you can prepare, it's about 8:36 now. So what you can prepare for most likely is in the next, if you live in Tarrant County and Denton County, I would imagine you'll see severe thunderstorm warnings pretty soon to be issued for your area, and then Dallas and Collin County not too long after that. But I'll watch it. Like I said, this is not a tornado, a classic tornado threat, so don't have to worry about that. Now, like I said, not that there can't be spin-ups, but that's not a big threat. And then, like I said, it's more of a wind event. But as you can see, and I'll show you because my good friend Angela talked about it looks like the line's trying to break up. Well, I wouldn't go that far, but I will point something out. So here, again, I talked about this just a second ago. So you see this line right here. So this is an outflow boundary that the storms have created that rushes out ahead. And if you've ever been in a storm yourself, then you know that it's not all the time, but sometimes right before the storms move through, you get this rush of cool air. That's what an outflow boundary is. Like I said, if they get pronounced enough, then I'll just give you a quick thunderstorm physics lesson. So scan out a little bit here. Whoops, wrong way. Okay. So this area, you don't really see that. So what that means is all of this air, which what's the temperature at my house right now? Yeah, it's 8:30 on October the 10th, and the temperature is 85 degrees, and in my house, the dew point is 71. Not typical at all for mid-October, almost mid-October. So what these storms are doing is they're ingesting this warm, humid air out ahead of it. So what happens is, it's not going to be 3D, but the air is, that's a horrible arrow. The air is flowing in like this, is warm, humid air. And then, of course, it's fueling these storms. Now down here, let me clear all this and we'll see, get a little better picture. All right, so down here, now it's not a very pronounced outflow, but it's definitely there. So what you're seeing there is that, it's in this area right here is a bunch of cool air. Now it's not very big right now. But what happens is that the thunderstorms, when they move into that rain-cooled area, then they're ingesting cool air as opposed to the warm, humid air, and so that does tend to suck the life out of them a little bit, if you will. Now that could be temporary; it can cycle up and down, so it doesn't mean that it's just all going to blow through or blow over. Although this is Texas, and I would never ever bet any money that wouldn't happen, because I've seen it happen before, even when everybody thought it wouldn't. So I'm not going to bet my house on that it's going to blow through. But that's definitely a trend we'll have to watch. And so let's put this in motion. All right, so let's see why it's doing that. Yes, Lori, you might get a few sprinkles out of it. And Ashley, you're welcome. Just trying to keep everybody up to date. Okay, so I think for now I'm going to sign off once this cycles through. So as you can see, it's it's a healthy squall line. I don't really think that it's going to just kind of peter out, although stranger things have happened. But it's something we have to watch. And let me check. Let me check my spotter reports here real quick. Well, let's see. Yeah, another report is 60-mile-an-hour wind gust east of Mineral Wells, so that's not surprising. West of Weatherford. Let's see. Yeah, the good news is, I'm going to refresh all this. I guess the one thing I wanted to the radar just refreshed again, so hold on. Yeah. Okay. So you're starting to see a little regeneration here. So just something that we're gonna have to watch. But I did want to show you just because it's cool looking. Not that one, although that's cool to me. It's a satellite picture. So obviously it gets dark, so it changes from a visible satellite to an infrared satellite. But you can just see how, in a way, not that they're majestic underneath if you're underneath one of them, but from above, they're really majestic thunderstorms blowing up, as you can see. So it just gives you a better indication that, as we thought, as the thunderstorms move through closer to North Texas, they would zipper down to the south and southwest, and that's exactly what you're seeing. So even our friends down in Waco and Austin will see some thunderstorms. I don't think it'll be quite as bad as ours. Not that ours is going to be horrible. All right, so let's look at my house real quick. All right, so like I said, 85. The wind's still gusting to 21. And dew point 71. So yeah, so it's still windy and it just feels stormy out there. All right. So with that, what I'll do is I will get when these warnings come out, I will definitely get those out. And if I feel like the need to come back on, I definitely will do that, especially if things ramp up. So I will just say this. If I do come back on, doesn't mean you have to panic. It just means that I'm just going to give you an update. I think that we need to do live. If a text update will do it, I will do it that way. All right. Thank you for watching. I appreciate it. And as always, I'm watching the weather, so you don't have to. Everyone stay safe, stay calm, and we will talk to you soon.